all for coming today. I'm very excited. It should be fun. To start the program, I'm going to be playing a contemporary Moerlen piece by composers Alice Gomez and Marilyn, Rife. Now, Alice Gomez especially, what I love about her, I've really been a big fan of hers because she has an ethnomusicological approach to how the way she writes music. The way she writes music is she researches different traditional styles, mostly Latin American styles. That's what she's mostly known for. What's interesting about this piece, however, Mbira's song, is it's actually more closely related to the Shona culture of people in Zimbabwe. So in my research to discover the meaning behind this piece and its intention, I actually reached out to her via email, and to my surprise, she actually responded, which was very cool. And in my inquiry, she responded and said that she fell in love with the instrument of the Mbira. And for those who don't know, an Mbira is like a finger piano. That's how it's more commonly known. I have one exhibited out there, and it's also known as kalimba commonly. But she told me that for her 8th birthday, that she received an Mbira for her birthday, and she was very excited because it's the first melodic percussion she's ever owned. Up until then, she'd been learning snare drum and drum set. And throughout her whole life, she became fascinated with the culture and started listening to it and curated recordings over time. And this piece, well, more about the culture of the Shona people. The Shona people, traditionally, the Mbira is both a style of music and a type of instrument, commonly made with a soundboard, a way to resonate that sound, and different metal pieces to serve as keys. Commonly, umbrella staves were used for that purpose. This piece, however, is supposed to encapsulate the kind of music that the Shona people would use. The Mbira was commonly used for ritualistic or religious ceremonies that are involved with communing with the dead or their ancestors. It's a program a ceremony called Akimbo, where the people communicate with their ancestors, which they call Akimbo. And they would also ask them for favors. They would ask them to give us more rain during drought, or give us more clouds when it's too sunny. And actually, a fun little fact is during Zimbabwe's period under British rule, the Mbira music was actually deemed as seen like evil for a long time until they eventually gained independence in the 1980s, and in that time became the national instrument of Zimbabwe and a staple of the Shona people. Alice Gomez told me, though, that she intended for this piece to sound like two people playing, because traditionally in Shona culture and in Mbira music, there are two players, a lead and the accompanist, and it's very often in the compound meter in 3/4 time, with different polyrhythms involved. So that is what she tried to encapsulate in this piece, and I hope you enjoy. This is Mbira song by Alice Gomez and Marilyn Rife. From the Dagara people in Ghana, but there is an ethnomusicologist by the name of Paul Berliner who did a lot of research, and he found that there are actually a lot of simulators in myriads of forms, both in terms of culture and music, between the Shona people and the Dagara. And there are also some direct connections. For example, the Ghanaians would supply a lot of instruments that the Shona people deconstruct and use to construct their Mbiras. But in terms of cultural characteristics, is the Dagara people also believe in using the Gyil as part of dirge and funeral ceremonies. And that does relate a lot to the background behind the Gyil. The background for the Gyil is actually a pretty debated topic amongst ethnomusicologists, but there is a lot of mysticism, and there's a legend correlating with its background. There's an incredible Gyil player by the name of Bernard Wilma, who's kind of responsible for bringing this instrument, as well as a lot of that culture, to the United States and across so many different countries. And in his thesis, he researched the legend of the Gyil. Now, the legend says that somebody from the Dagara people, a Dagara hunter, encountered a mythical inhabitant of the forest called a Kontombili, and that Kontombili was playing the Gyil and was playing this particular piece that we're about to play. And the hunter was loved the music and asked or consulted in the Kontombili to teach him the music, in which he did. And he also taught him about the instrument. And the instrument is tuned pentatonically, so essentially it's the same as if you were to play all black keys on the piano. And it also uses these gourds as their resonators, and they have holes within them that are covered in spider web membranes, and that gives it its characteristic and iconic buzzing sound that is believed to invoke the spirits of the Kontombili. And to return the favor, the Dagara hunter actually killed the Kontombili and took the music for himself and taught it to the Dagara people. And it's used very often in ceremonies, especially funerals. In fact, the Dagara people, there can't be a funeral without a Gyil player. But what's really interesting about this particular piece, in terms of musical similarities, is that it's also in a compound meter, and it works with an ostinato. The meaning of this ostinato, however, there's actually a name for it, and you'll hear it as we get down to the lower register of the instrument. It's called the Kpatsa ostinato, and it's actually believed to have a power to drive away the spirits of the Kontombili during funerals, to keep them from interfering. But that's a little bit about the background of this instrument, and my friend Rochelle is going to accompany me on this piece called Kontombili We. It's about the origins of the instrument, the Gyil. marimba. And this next piece I'm going to play for you is called Akimbo. It's by a French composer by the name of Benoit Moerlen. Now, he's a very interesting composer. He loves to associate his compositions from, he loves the continent of Asia. He moves around there a lot. He works with Japan a lot. He even started a group called Gonzilla that does music there. This piece, Akimbo, is interesting because he describes it himself as having an African ostinato in the left hand. But what's fascinating is he actually associates this piece a lot with gamelan music from Indonesia. Now, what's interesting is he actually plays this piece a lot. I believe the official recording of this piece is not even as a solo, but it's actually supposed to be part of an ensemble. And he plays it a lot with this group called Sakara Sakura, which is a Japanese group that plays Indonesian music. And there are a lot of really interesting recordings of him playing this piece with them. And what's interesting about the gamelan music is it kind of connects that idea of where the Gyil could potentially come from. It's debated where the Gyil actually comes from, but a lot of ethnomusicologists actually believe it's possible it could have been a conjoint effort between people of Ghana and Indonesia. That is something that is debated, but a lot of people believe that is true due to studying migration patterns from Indonesia to Western Africa centuries ago. But the gamelan people, there's a type of gamelan, or excuse me, the people from Bali, that's where gamelan music comes from. They use an instrument a lot in that music called a jagog, which is actually very similar to the Gyil. It's even often tuned pentatonically, but the biggest difference is it's made out of bamboo. And it's often played with 4 mallets, while Gyil usually traditionally plays with 2 mallets. And so then Moerlen actually took this piece, and he took what would have been a part for a jagog and applied it to a contemporary, more modern marimba, and plays it with gamelan ensembles such as Sakara Sakura, and then put it in different styles. Because jagog music is very well known for having more modest rhythm in the lower end of the instrument, and a more juxtaposing and interesting dense rhythm in the right hand, which you'll see in this piece that is very different from the left hand, but also somehow complements it at the same level. So this is Akimbo by Benoit Moerlen. going to be entering over here soon. But as we travel back to Ghana, we're actually going to be experiencing a new group of people called the Ga people, who are known for their rhythm drumming. And you might ask, well, what connection does this have maybe to something from or inspired by Indonesia? But the Ga people actually share a lot of similarities. There was a ethnomusicologist by the name of Paul Humphrey who studied similarities and found a lot of interesting similarities in the way that a leader of a certain group, both from the gamelan music culture and from the Ga music culture, would lead their group rhythmically and giving calls. But there's also a more direct connection. There's another researcher by the name of Dagara who actually has ancestry in gamelan music, specifically J-God music. And she came to the conclusion that her ancestors, who were part of J-God and gamelan touring group, actually eventually did encounter African drummers from Ghana, and they were heavily inspired by that as well. There are also cultural similarities. The gamelan music is very often used for different types. Actually, it's traditionally used for what they call mutual aid ceremonies, where people get together and work with each other to help each other's problems, like typically neighbors or patch each other's needs. That's a traditional purpose, but it's also just commonly used for children's birthday parties and some wedding ceremonies and that sort of thing. But in terms of this music from the Ga people, we're going to be playing a piece called Kpatsa. Now, Kpatsa is actually traditionally used for a ceremony called Depo. Now, Depo is a ceremony for young women. It's a coming-of-age ceremony. It's supposed to acknowledge their transition from childhood to adulthood. And what's funny about Kpatsa is it actually has very similar mystical history to the Dagara people's Gyil. Almost identical, actually, where somebody from the Ga people discovered a dwarf dancing the Kpatsa dance, and they took the dance and brought it back to their people. So whenever you see groups playing Kpatsa, and they typically have women dancers, the dancers are actually imitating what the legacy says that the dwarf was dancing. And what's interesting is the dwarf, they're known for having two legs that are completely different sizes, so the steps are very uneven. So the steps for the dances are very uneven. And you'll see that in the drumming as well, is that some offbeats and interesting upbeats are very stressed, some more than others. And the Ga people would use this kind of music. That was the traditional purpose for that, the ceremony of Depo and the coming-of-age ceremony of women. That is not just exclusive use anymore. In fact, it's probably more so used for helping establish platforms for public discourse, as well as funerals and other purposes as well. But the biggest difference, though, between the Ga people and the Dagara people I can find is the Ga people do not like to play music during harvest season. They always consider it disrespectful. While the Dagara people do like to play music during the harvest season, in fact, the most traditional Dagara instrument is called the dalari, which is actually exhibited in the display out there, which you can see. And it's sort of a pot with like a snake skin on it. That is one of the most traditional instruments. And the music of the dalari actually is supposed to announce the coming of the harvest season. So you know that's the coming of the harvest season for the Dagara people when you hear dalari music, but for the Ga people, you know it's the coming of the harvest season when there's no music at all. So, and in fact, Benoit, who I was talking about earlier, there was an instance recorded where he was working with the Ga people and he was teaching music to some college students. He had to get permission from the chief because it was during harvest season to teach them this music. And there are different, in each rhythmic thing that goes on this piece has its own use. There is a part where you'll hear me playing on the beat more, and that is for the dancers. That's like a cue for them to transition into their next main movement or part. And there's every part means something. You'll see me playing towards the center of the drum at one point. That translates to embracing the world. But everything here has a purpose. And just like gamelan music, it's kind of chamberesque where everybody's communicating and there's no set end. We all communicate and that's how we know the end. And you know, people from Ghana will play this music for hours. so you're just getting a little fancy today. So this is Kpatsa.
Didn't tell us how long she was waiting.
I appreciate it so much. Thank you to Rochelle, Leeper, Eleanor, and the other staff for assisting me. I would also love to give, I want to acknowledge my parents and my grandparents for, they supplied all the snacks and refreshments out there. Mary, my sister, is helping so many logistical things. She made the programs and everything, so thank you so much. I also want to give a special shout out to Gyil because he's been with me for a long time and playing all sorts of music with me, as well as Luke. Thank you so much for being here. I would also a huge thank you to Dr. Collins and Jordan Collins for showing up today. I really appreciate it. And I would also love to give a huge shout out to family members Dick and Sue here, because I don't think in my entire time at college they've missed a single performance. I also want to give a huge thank you to Ms. Joan Wenzel, who's here today. She taught me throughout high school and middle school, and I would not be here by any stretch of imagination if it weren't for her and her guidance. So thank you so much, Ms. Joan Wenzel. And last but not least, I would love to give a huge thank you to Mr. Tom Robley for helping me workshop this throughout the semester and helping me with every single little detail, and as well as being an incredible mentor and director and teacher throughout the last 4 years. Thank you.